All right, hello and welcome into my full NFC and AFC championship weekend reaction. I'm gonna in my recap as well. Going to recap and react to everything that I saw in both the NFC and AFC championship, and then I will end this episode with just a brief talk about the current state of officiating in football as a whole, not just the NFL but college football. I think we saw two poorly officiated games yesterday. You could say on both sides. I'll get into that a little bit more later, but we'll end the show talking about just the state of officiating in both college and NFL, just in football as a whole. But like I said, this is my total and ultimate championship weekend recap and reaction. So let's go ahead and dive into it. And we're going to start with the game that started everything off yesterday, and that was the NFC Championship game. And obviously, that championship game ended with the Eagles 31, 49ers 7. Eagles heading to their second Super Bowl appearance in the last 6 years. So hats off to the Philadelphia Eagles. Not a lot of recap and reaction to this one. Obviously, if you're a football fan and watch this game and just understand football, just have a decent understanding of football, you know was the difference in this game, and that was that Brock Purdy injury on the sixth offensive play for the 49ers in the first quarter. So your first possession, your first time you have the ball, your quarterback goes down on the sixth play, fumbles that ball, gives the ball back to the Philadelphia Eagles, and then hurts his elbow, and has actually been reported today that he had a torn UCL in his elbow, which is a 6 month injury, and potentially Tommy John surgery as well. So this is something that even if they would have found a way to win the game, if you were San Francisco, you wouldn't have had Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl. That just wouldn't have been the thing. You would have needed Jimmy Garoppolo to come back, or just something of some crazy magnitude to happen. And then obviously after Brock Purdy went out, Josh Johnson came in. Now Josh Johnson is the definition of a journeyman quarterback. He's played for basically half the league, and he's older now. He's in his 30s. He's not a young kid anymore. He is your quintessential, like I said, journeyman quarterback, practice squad, scout team quarterback. Probably not a guy. I mean, all due respect to Josh Johnson, but probably not a guy you're comfortable with taking snaps in a championship game, especially on the road against the one seed in Philadelphia. So once Brock Purdy went down, this game was pretty much over. But let's just break down that first drive for the Philadelphia Eagles. They go down the field, they get a touchdown, but a very controversial play, obviously, the fourth down pass to Devontae Smith. I believe it was like 4th and 5, 4th and 6. That play was Jalen Hurts scrambles out to his left, throws the ball down the field to Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith makes what looks like, and I thought as well, just an acrobatic, incredible catch. But obviously, they went to the replay after the play. But you could tell Devontae Smith, right after he caught that ball, he was motioning over to the sideline, motioning over to the offense, like, hey, he was giving them the little bit of that, like, I guess that's like, or this, like this here, like, that's hurry up, let's get going. So you can tell that Devontae Smith pretty much knew on his end that he didn't catch that ball. And they went quick and they got a play off, scored 3 plays later, and then obviously they took a 7-0 lead. And that was a huge, even though that was just the first drive of the game in the first quarter, obviously, that was a huge momentum swing into the Philadelphia Eagles' favor. Obviously, they had the momentum. They're at home. They're the number one seed. They're the favored team. But to go down the field and score on the first possession and kind of impose your will is huge in any game. It's huge in any game, especially when you're the home team, because now you have the lead and the crowd is behind you. So my question to that play is, obviously, the 49ers coaches and staff that's on the field, you have to see that Devontae Smith is motioning to his offense, let's go quick. So that should immediately tell you something's wrong. Like this guy, the guy who just got credited for the catch, doesn't think it was a catch. He's telling his offense to go quick and go fast. Let's get on the ball. Let's run a play before they have a chance to challenge it and obviously review the play. So that should have been indication number one to the San Francisco 49ers staff. And I mean, I know it's early on in the game, but what does a timeout hurt there? Take a timeout. Obviously, there was some question there if he caught it. I thought from the replay, so the first couple of replays they showed on Fox showed on TV, it looked like a catch. But from the angle you couldn't see, and then finally, the funny thing for Fox, I don't know what was going on there, but Fox didn't show the actual replay where you could see the ball hitting the ground until after Philadelphia ran their next play. Now I know they could only really show like one or two replays in that time because Philadelphia did go that quick, but they finally showed that replay where you could see that Devontae Smith did not catch the ball. It does hit the ground. But here's the thing: if you're on the 49er staff, especially the people up in the booth, you have access to every angle. You have access to every angle, and you should be on top of this. This is the NFC Championship game. This isn't like Week 4 and you're playing in Philadelphia, and you know it's going to be a game between two good teams. But at the end of the day, you could stand to lose that game and still be fine. This is the NFC fucking championship game. You need to be on top of this. You need to know, okay, without a shadow of a doubt, he made that catch, especially on a fourth down. You be getting the ball. You challenge that. You obviously win. He dropped the ball. You're getting the ball. You are getting the ball, and that is your ball, and you stopped him on fourth down. The momentum is in your favor. Now, whether Brock Purdy gets hurt in that sequence of plays or not, like he did eventually, I don't know what happens. There's no way of knowing that outside of getting Ashton Kutcher and doing the butterfly effect. But yeah, no, there's no way of knowing that. But still, this is the NFC Championship game. You have to be on top of that. You have to be ready to have, and in that kind of scenario, have every kind of replay at your disposal. And if there is a shadow of a doubt, you get on the horn to Kyle Shanahan or wherever you need to get on the horn to on the field and be like, no, stop this game. Call a timeout, challenge the play. At the very least, call a timeout. Let's get a second, third, fourth look at this during the timeout so we can make the right call and challenge this play and obviously get the ball and win on that huge fourth down there in a pivotal start to the game, obviously on the road. You stop the Philadelphia Eagles on 4th and 6 on that play and get the ball back. The crowd would still be in it obviously because it's early and it's only 0-0, but the momentum has shifted into your favor and everything is in the ball is all the way in your court for this drive, and you are playing with house money because you got that first stop. But no, the staff missed it. They didn't challenge it. They didn't go to the review. They obviously weren't paying attention to Devontae Smith literally pleading with the offense and Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni to get in a play and let's go. Let's just go right now, get a playoff because I did not catch that ball. Now, it didn't look like he said that or he voiced that or anything like that, but by his just gestures to the offense and just his overall reaction to what happened, he could tell that he did not catch that ball. And if you were just watching him, you could tell that he believed that he didn't catch that ball. But I mean, a lot of people, like I said at the beginning of this reaction, is going to put this on the Brock Purdy injury. And yes, this game was over when Brock Purdy went out and Josh Johnson went in. Just Josh Johnson at this stage of his career is not a guy that you could rely on to come in an NFC Championship game on the road. But going into this game, one of the keys for me going into this game was, could Philadelphia get pressure on Brock Purdy and make him uncomfortable? And they did a lot more than that. They knocked him out of the game. And Philadelphia, as I mentioned in my preview, in my NFC and AFC championship preview show, led the league in sacks with 70 sacks. That was 15 more than the next best team, which was Kansas City, which we'll get into later in that reaction to the AFC championship, but led the league in sacks with 70 sacks. And so they're a team that gets after the quarterback, and that's exactly what they did. They got after Brock Purdy. They made him fumble the ball and got the ball back, so they turned over the ball on him, and they knocked him out of the game. Now, obviously, their intentions are to knock him out of the game, but your intentions as a defensive line is to get after the quarterback and get him on the ground, and that's exactly what they did. And they got to him well enough in a kind of a precarious situation for him where it ended up injuring him and tearing his UCL. So that's exactly what the Philadelphia Eagles were looking to do, was to get after Brock Purdy. Like I said, they weren't looking to knock him out, but they were looking to get after him, and that's exactly what they did, and that's exactly what they've done better than any team by far the entire regular season and postseason. So hats off to them. I mean, they did exactly what I thought they could do and what I thought they should do to win, and that's what they did. Like I said, we're going into the game to knock out Brock Purdy, but to make him uncomfortable and to get after him, and they did that on the first series, and that's all they needed to do to be a difference in this game and to flip this game into their hands. But to look at the Eagles offense, just in a total of 269 yards. Now, obviously, I'm sure that at some point they knew that they were going to win this game regardless of the offensive output. I think they knew at some point that 20 points would probably be good enough to win this game. 10 points would have been good enough to win this game, but 20 points was going to be good enough to win this game. They probably took their foot off the gas late in the third quarter, and then obviously in the fourth quarter when it was evident that the 49ers couldn't do anything on offense, and Brock Purdy came back to the game after Josh Johnson was knocked out. So there you go with the Eagles getting after the quarterback again and knocking out Josh Johnson with the concussion. Like I said, not trying to knock him out, but getting after the quarterback like they do. So they end up knocking out Josh Johnson. Brock Purdy has to go back into the game. He can't throw the ball, so he has to hand off the ball or throw little screen passes. Obviously, you're not going to do anything on offense against a defense like the Philadelphia Eagles. You can have all the designs, you can have all the schemes and everything you want. Kyle Shanahan's probably one of the smartest offensive coaches in the league, if not the smartest offensive coach in the league, but you can't scheme enough run plays and misdirections that's going to stump that Philadelphia Eagles offense when they know you have nothing but that. There's no threat of throwing the ball. It has to be a run, whether it's McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Kittle ran it a couple of times. It doesn't matter. It has to be a run. And at that point, so yeah, the Eagles' offense, like I said, was not impressive at all, only 269 yards. But I do believe at some point, especially late in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter, they thought to themselves, okay, well, we're going on to the Super Bowl. This game's a wrap. This team can't do anything against our defense. They are supremely limited with what happened to their quarterback. So we're moving on to the Super Bowl, and basically we just need to kind of not screw things up, and that's exactly what they did. They will obviously need a better offensive performance against Kansas City in the Super Bowl to win the Super Bowl, but that'll be a conversation for when I do my Super Bowl preview. And now we'll go ahead and move to the AFC Championship, which was by far the better overall game, and that was obviously the Chiefs winning 23 over the Bengals 20 in Arrowhead, not Burrowhead, Arrowhead, to move on to the Super Bowl. And first things first, I'm going to start off with Mahomes. Hats off to Patrick Mahomes. That was a Herculean, a career-defining effort by him. I mean, he was on one leg most of the game. He pretty much looked like he re-injured or aggravated even worse that high ankle sprain in the third quarter, so he could barely move. Three of his top four receivers, Juju Smith-Schuster went out with an injury. Kadarius Toney went out with an injury, and Mecole Hardman went out with an injury. Those were three of his top receivers on the season, and they went out. He was basically left with 65, maybe 70% of Travis Kelce because he had that back injury that he was dealing with after injuring it in practice on Friday, and then Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and then just a bunch of guys, guys. And so, unbelievable effort by Patrick Mahomes, solidifies himself as the best quarterback and probably the best player in the NFL, but certainly the best quarterback. Joe Burrow is second, but not a close second at this point. It is Patrick Mahomes and everybody else when it comes to quarterback. But yeah, he was unbelievable. 29 of 43, 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That second touchdown to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, that was a great play. Pressure in his face. He can barely move, can barely push off that back foot because, like I said, he aggravated that high ankle sprain even worse in that game. And that might be a big factor going into the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that later. But could barely push off of that. Throws an absolute dime to Marquez Valdes-Scantling right in front of the safety, who was basically like a split second away from knocking that ball down and forcing them to kick a field goal. And that would have turned the game over because Cincinnati went down on the next drive and ended up getting a touchdown. Or I think 2 drives later and getting a touchdown and tying the game, but they would have taken the lead with that touchdown. So great effort by Patrick Mahomes, just unbelievable effort. Like I said, solidifying himself as the number one quarterback in the league, and clearly, I think, the best football player in the league, and his putting himself in the conversation, and obviously it's still young in his career, as a potential all-timer at the quarterback position. But just to look over on the Bengals side, we talked about the offensive line coming into this game. I thought they played unbelievably well against the Buffalo Bills, but I thought that they could struggle against this Chiefs front. This Chiefs front is 10 times better than the Bills front, and you have an all-timer on the Chiefs front, an all-pro player in Chris Jones, who showed up with 2 sacks and had the third down sack on Joe Burrow when they were trying to drive to win the game late in the fourth quarter with under a minute left. Chris Jones gets to Joe Burrow, brings him down, is the reason why the Kansas City Chiefs got the ball back for a chance to win that game and ultimately won that game, with other things that happened, obviously, but a Butker field goal won the game. So Joe Burrow sacked 5 times, hit 12 times. So, I mean, it was a gutty effort from Joe Burrow. Not a great effort, 26 of 41, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Not a great effort, but he had no time in the pocket. He ended up being the Cincinnati Bengals leading rusher with 30 rushing yards and had some big first down runs too. I love that play design when I think it was like 3rd and 4, and you could tell that the defensive line for the Chiefs was a little bit spread out a little bit, so the middle of the field was open. I love that I don't know if it was called as a quarterback draw or Joe Burrow just saw, hey, this is going to be wide open. I can get there easily, slide down and get a first down. He did that. And then that 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 14 play where he just took it upon himself. He juked out. I think it was a safety or a corner. got the first down again. A gritty effort from Joe Burrow as well, showing that he is the second best quarterback in this league, and he is someone to be reckoned with. Not his best game, but obviously he was getting no time, and that has obviously been the storyline for the Bengals these last 2 years. If Joe Burrow just had a decent offensive line play in big games in the last 2 years, he may be holding up a Lombardi Trophy last year and be playing for Lombardi Trophy this year. But yeah, the offensive line did not give him any time in this game. They had to be quick throws, or he'd had to move around and break a tackle or scramble outside of the pocket to make a throw. And obviously, the Tyler Boyd injury early on in the game really hurt, because Tyler Boyd did have some on their first touchdown drive, or their first scoring drive when they got a field goal. Tyler Boyd had two big catches, because after the first drive where Jamar Chase had some after the first couple of drives where Jamar Chase had some decent catches and some decent yardage, they had Trent McDuffie on him, and they started to slow down Jamar Chase. But obviously, Cincinnati still has a lot of other receiving weapons. You have T. Higgins, who had a nice game. You have Hayden Hurst, who didn't have a great game, missed some opportunities there. And then obviously you have Tyler Boyd. When Tyler Boyd goes down, now there's more attention to T. Higgins and obviously to Jamar Chase, and Hayden Hurst didn't step up in that area. So the Tyler Boyd injury really hurt, because that could have been um, Joe Burrow's kind of security blanket there, as Kansas City focuses on more of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Tyler Boyd is definitely capable, especially against that Kansas City Chiefs secondary, which isn't great, to expose them and get the ball down the field and find the opening and make some plays. So that was a big difference there. But at the end of the day, it was just a tough game for the Cincinnati Bengals to overcome the offensive line play. But looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, if I look at both these teams and I look at this game in totality, I really wanted this game to go to overtime, because it felt like it deserved to go to overtime, because these two teams were pretty evenly matched. I believe, obviously, I think Cincinnati won the second half, and obviously the Chiefs really won the first half. But breaking down this game, these teams were really evenly matched, because you had an offensive line that wasn't protecting Joe Burrow well, and you had a limited Patrick Mahomes. So it's almost like that's an even that kind of cancels each other out there. And then yes, the Chiefs lose three of their top wide receivers. Cincinnati loses Tyler Boyd and can't run the ball at all. So you could kind of see Kansas City couldn't run the ball either, but Kansas City is not a great running team, and they really have never really been a great running team under when Patrick Mahomes has been there. So that's kind of their MO. Patrick Mahomes wins their games. But just to get back, so it was kind of like in the level playing field there. Then obviously just that play there at the end by Joseph Osai, I believe you can almost let that play on, but it was a late hit. It was a personal foul. In that kind of situation, I would kind of like the ref to swallow his whistle, but you kind of do have to call that there, especially when it's Patrick Mahomes. If that was like Daniel Jones or someone of a lesser known quarterback, they probably don't get that call. But Patrick Mahomes gutting it out on one leg, making that play, gets that call, especially in Arrowhead, more times than not. But I think at the end of the day, both of these games, and this is kind of the conversation I wanted to get into. So obviously, hats off to the Chiefs. You win 23-20. You're headed to the Super Bowl. Great game. I thought this game saved the NFL from a pretty terrible championship weekend, because that first game, the NFC Championship game, was awful, and it was unwatchable for most of the game, because just what happened with the quarterback situation with the San Francisco 49ers. And the AFC Championship started off a little slow. You had like field goals back and forth. It looks like Kansas City had control. Bengals came out in the second half like they do, one of the best second half teams in the league, and responded and made a run and obviously tied the game, and pretty much would have had the game in overtime if it wasn't for the Osai penalty. But Osai, feel terrible for him. He made a lot of plays. He had a sack in the game. He made a lot of other plays. He was hitting Mahomes a couple of times, making good plays in the run game. So he had a good game, just a terrible play for him and a terrible way to end your season, especially for him in that way. But I think the Bengals will be back. I'm not worried about them. I think they have a good team, a good kind of foundation. But if I were them, I would start to think about draft O linemen, because you had a good O line this year, but those guys got injured, and your backups clearly weren't up to task in this kind of game against this kind of opponent. Maybe you just try to have more depth at the offensive line position, and because the offensive line is the difference between you holding a Lombardi Trophy and being Super Bowl champs last year and being in the Super Bowl this year. So just something to think about for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm sure their fans are been thinking about it for a long time. But just the bigger, like I said, the bigger thing with both these games was the overall officiating, and questionable would be putting it mild. It was not good officiating all around on both games, and it seemed to favor the home team. I mean, the discrepancy, I think it was like 11-4 penalties wise versus for the San Francisco 49ers versus the Eagles. The 49ers were already at a deficit with their quarterback injury. But there was that second touchdown drive would have made it 14-7 for the Eagles. They got 3 first downs on penalties. Now, 2 of those penalties were legit penalties. I thought the third one was a little ticky tack, but still, like I said, officiating, and that's going to be my topic to kind of end this show here. Questionable officiating has been a topic of discussion in both the NFL and college football all season, and it's something that I think needs to be addressed in both areas. Obviously, it's harder on the college football level because it's on conferences. Each conference has their own set of officials, but I think each conference needs to sit down and have a conversation with their officials and maybe some more training. But in the NFL level, you have to have a conversation with these officials. But I think where this would start with officials is more accountability. These refs can make these calls and blow and make calls that can change outcomes or affect outcomes of games, and then boom, they run off to the sunset and you don't hear from them. I think refs, especially after a poor game where you feel like there was some missed calls, some clear missed calls, should have to go, at least the head ref of the crew should have to go up to the podium after a game and answer some questions from the media and other places. Just like coaches do, just like players do, you have to hold them accountable for their actions on the field. They play a big part in games. Now, obviously, you never want to, as a football team, any sports team, you never want to leave the game in the hands of a referee. But sometimes you have no control over that because what happens on the field of play can always can bring in the refs and they can affect the game. So sometimes you just don't have any control over that. But at the end of the day, these refs aren't accountable at all. Most of the time, you don't really know their names outside the head ref. And then, like I said, they can make a bad call that affects the game negatively, and you don't even hear from them. Sometimes the group will come out and be like, "Hey, we missed this call," but you don't hear from that ref. You don't hear directly from that ref. You don't hear that ref getting questioned after the game, like, "Okay, well, what'd you miss?" I understand these refs are human, and this is a human error that they make, and it's something that can be changed, but it's something that can happen. And when you have humans refereeing and officiating games, these are things that can happen. I understand that. But these players and coaches are also humans. And whenever they make a bad play or a bad coaching decision or miss a tackle or drop a ball, throw an interception, they're at the podium at the end after the game, talking to the media and other people like that, answering questions and basically facing the music. These refs are nowhere to be found. They ride off, probably get in their cars, go back to their hotels, fly back home, whatever happens, and you don't hear from him. If it's really that bad of a call, the ref kind of group, the referee union, will send out like a tweet or send out like a message saying like, "Hey, we messed this up. We'll try to do better. We are human just like you," and they'll make some kind of apology or something like that. But that's it. You don't hear from the ref directly. There definitely needs to be more accountability when it comes to refereeing and officiating, and you need to hold, especially the head ref, accountable in situations where they make egregious calls that can affect a game, effective outcome of a game, that can affect a player or a coach's legacy in that game as well. And then for me, I mean, I can't believe we're sitting here in 2023 and we still have the chain gang, and we're still using yard markers like that to determine where the ball is on the field. This, like, we have the technology to put into footballs, literally like I don't like microchip or something like that into footballs to know exactly where it's at on the field. We don't need some two random dudes making minimum wage standing on a sideline holding a 10-yard chain. Oh, let's get out the measurement, and then they run out and they do the measurement, and then they go back and it takes like 15 minutes after the refs talk about it, and then they do the measurement, and then they decide, oh, okay, it's a first down, it's past the chain. That should be boom, quick. You should know exactly where the football is on the field. Like I said, the fact that in 2023 we still have a chain gang and we still have to use other things like pylons and things like that to determine whether the ball's in the end zone, whether the ball is a first down, where the ball is at on the field is just beyond me. There should be some kind of grid on the field that can determine where the ball's at, and some kind of technology inside the ball that can determine where the ball is at as well. like I said, it's 2023. There should definitely be some kind of technology because I've seen all the sports science and the sports breakdowns, and there is something in the ball that they can track. They can track the velocity of the ball, how fast they're throwing it. They can track the trajectory of the ball. They can track how far, how long it travels in the air. So if you can track all that with a football, how come you can't track where it's at on the field to determine whether it was a first down or not? And why do we have to have just random two dudes standing on the sideline holding a 10-yard chain and taking up 10 minutes of our time trying to pull the chain all the way out? Oh, it's a first down, yeah. When this could have been decided 10 minutes ago and we could have just went on with the game and they would have been a lot quicker. Let's use some of the technology we have at our disposal in the year 2023. So that's just kind of my overall thought there with officiating. I think there definitely needs, and last thought would be, I think there needs to be some oversight, and I believe there is some sort of oversight, like some kind of committee or something like that that overlooks and kind of judges and critiques refs and how they ref and officiate on a game to game basis. But maybe that needs to be made public because I feel like these refs, there's no ramifications for them making a bad call or blowing a call or missing a call. There's no ramifications for them. And like I said, at the end of the day, I understand they are human and it happens, but so are the players and the coaches, and they are questioned to the T by just a line of media members, writers, all kinds of different people, talking heads on TV. They are judged to the T and asked and basically, berated sometimes at the podium after games where these refs get to go live their lives and don't have to answer for it ever again. And like I said, for the most part, outside of, a handful of refs, I don't think there's a lot of NFL fans that can name me 5 refs in this league. And you should at least know the head refs' names. And like I said, there should be more accountability on that end for the referees. That was my thought on officiating. I think it vastly needs to improve both on the college and pro level. I think it's taken a step back these last couple of years. This is the number one sports product in the country. Football, both at the college and NFL level, it needs to make sure it needs to be officiated at the best and highest level. The people who think the NFL and football and sports are rigged crowd, those people are they're just conspiracy theorists and they're just crazy people. They're the same people as the election is rigged and people like that. They're just people you don't give time to. But they have gained a lot of steam because of the poor officiating on both the college and pro levels. It needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed soon. That is it for me. Thank you for watching this show. Obviously, this is my championship weekend reaction. My name is Cody. I'm the host of Sports Talk on a Budget. If you want to watch any of my other shows, they are all available on YouTube under Sports Talk on a Budget, or you can just listen to my podcast. They're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or basically wherever you get your podcast. And you can follow me on all the social media such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Thank you for listening and have a great day.